Hey, you guys. I'm Tasha, and today I'm excited to have my friend Doug Diamond here to talk with us again. I guess it's a little bit, when he talks, it's serious stuff. And so I'm excited in a way, and also I'm nervous in a way about what we'll be talking about. But I just felt led to have him on here as a guest. And so I just pray that whatever comes out of this time today, that it will be beneficial for you guys and helpful, and um, and that I pray that you would have an open mind and open ears to hear whatever you need to hear today, or maybe you don't need to hear. That's fine. So a little introduction about Doug. Um, Doug is in the music industry, and the way that that's what he does for a job, but what he does on the side is how I met him. He is the engineer, basically, I think, for Lost Arts Radio, which is a radio show that, kind of changed my life. They talk about current events and health and everything that's sort of important in the world, and it all kind of fits together. And they talk about what we can do to take positive action, and it's a great show. I've learned a lot from the episodes that I have listened to, and I've learned a lot from Doug. Also on his Facebook wall, he shares daily updates on current events that are not in the mainstream media. And I kind of grew up my whole life listening to the mainstream media, and I'm learning now that it's controlled. We only hear what those who own the mainstream media want us to hear. So it's been really eye-opening to learn from Doug, and he's taught me a lot, and I wanted him to be able to share with you again today. The election is coming up here in the U.S., and a lot of stuff is going on. So thank you, Doug, for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Tasha. It's good to be here.
I think before we go into the heavy stuff, let's talk about a different heavy topic, which is,
Okay.
I want you guys to hear about what happened to Doug. I've shared with you about him, about his accident in other videos, but I really want you to hear from Doug about the various aspects of his accident. And so Doug, why don't you, if you could tell us what led up to the accident, tell us about the accident and the sort of the conclusions that you've come to reflecting back on it, and I'll probably ask you some more questions.
Okay. Well, I guess you could say it started March 11th this year. In the early morning hours of March 11th, sometime I woke up from what I thought at the time was a very vivid and descriptive communication. I thought it was a dream, and I guess most people would still say it was a dream, but it woke me up, and it kind of shook me a little bit because usually when I have dreams at night, they're totally nonsensical and they're just bizarre and random. I don't know if that's right brain and left brain working somehow, or what exactly, as far as the fact that they don't really make sense. And I don't usually even remember what I'm dreaming, but in this case, I remembered it very well, and I still remember it. And I remember waking up and being scared, and just taking a few minutes and trying to understand what happened, and then finally calming down enough to go back to sleep, where the dream then resumed, and it picked up right where it left off, which that's something that I've never had happen before. I don't know if that's even normal or possible, but anyway, the dream was, I describe it more like a Skype phone call. It was almost like you and I talking here, except I couldn't see the other person. I could only hear him. And it was definitely a male. It was definitely a guy. And he was talking to me uh, straight into my mind. And I could hear uh, tap, tap, tapping on the keyboard. Like I could tell he was typing something, but his mouth, I don't think, was moving. I was hearing a voice, but I kind of got the impression it wasn't necessarily his voice. It was just a voice. And what he was typing, I was hearing in my mind. And he basically warned me and told me that I had to stop doing what I was doing, which meant posting on Facebook and doing those things that you just described, as far as trying to get real, actual information out there, not what you would hear in the mainstream media. And I do a lot of posts. I probably do, a dozen or 20 or so posts a day on my Facebook page. And, it's not like I have millions of friends. I don't even do it publicly. I post to friends only. And I do that for a reason, mostly to try and keep the trolls under control somewhat. But anyway, in this particular dream, he warned me and told me that I had to stop doing what I'm doing or else. And he didn't say what the or else meant. I just knew instinctively what he meant when he said or else. And he meant some sort of bad thing would happen, some harm would come to me or someone. So we had an exchange kind of back and forth. I remember asking him how he was communicating with me like this through a dream, because it was somebody I didn't know and had never talked to before. And I instantly got the impression that he was like maybe a military person, but certainly someone that's probably black ops, probably underground somewhere, probably in some secretive location. I don't know. That's just my take. That was my instant first thought. And he told me that I already knew how we were communicating. And what he meant by that was that he knew that he was talking to me and we were communicating back and forth, not really through telepathy, but through something I later found out was called synthetic telepathy, where he's able to type a message and using something called voice to skull technology, which I found out later is real. He sent this message to me and we communicated back and forth. He could hear what I was communicating to him somehow, and I could also hear him, but only from typing. So, and again, I don't think it was his spoken voice that I was hearing. Anyway, he told me that I had to stop what I was doing or else. And he went into some detail about what the or else meant. I think he just meant that he didn't necessarily know details, but he knew something bad was going to happen. It was almost like he was warning me, not as my friend, but he just wanted to tell me that I really needed to stop or something bad was going to happen. And I remember being worried about that, but not concerned to the point where I really asked more questions. I just knew that he probably didn't have that many more details. So I didn't really go into depth with him about what he was warning me about necessarily. He did mention my daughter, and I got the impression that she was in danger to some degree, and that I certainly was. And I never got the impression anyone else in my family was. So I asked him how we were communicating. He said, you already know, which I know that meant that we were communicating wirelessly, that he was communicating to me either through some sort of, my wife has a cell phone. Maybe maybe he was communicating to me electronically that way. I didn't really know. And the phone was in the room with us, so it's possible that that could have been the conduit. I don't really know. I don't totally understand all of that. I just know that it is possible. Voice to skull technology is certainly real. And I asked him how he knew where I was and how he could find me, and because I knew, I don't have a cell phone, so I was a little confused about that. And again, he said, well, you already know. And then he still proceeded to explain a little bit. And he said, we track you through your DNA. And that sort of surprised me because I had not too long before that had been listening to some interviews and things about CERN and Anthony Patch, who's a guy that I trust and listen to. He's a fellow believer, and
CERN is spelled CERN. It's in
CERN.
Switzerland, if you guys want to look that up.
Yep, it's the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, Switzerland, and I'm sure most of the people watching this video already have heard about it. But anyway, Anthony Patch is probably the best expert on quantum physics and how CERN plays into what we're sort of experiencing in this dimension, and also it's affecting other dimensions. But he often talks about quantum computers and the way your DNA is not how it can be tracked, but how your DNA is your own kind of like fingerprint. So, through these quantum computers, your DNA has a signature that it's certainly only you have that, so you can be tracked, is what I'm trying to get at. And I didn't fully understand what the guy on the other end in the dream was telling me, but he told me that I was being tracked through my DNA, and I got the impression that we can all be tracked that way. Not to say we all are, I'm just saying it is possible. So anyway, the main point of the whole thing was that he was warning me that something bad was going to happen. So when I woke up in the morning and had time to reflect on it a little bit, one of the first things I did was I Facebook messaged, I think, 3 or 4 people. Tasha, you were one of them, and a few other people that was in our group chat, and just explained what happened. And so
because
I know
we had
it
been
was
talking about others, like I talked about where I had a dream and then it happened, a dream, and so we were in this conversation already.
Yeah. So anyway, I know it was March 11th because I went back later and looked at the timestamp for that message when I started putting a few of the puzzle pieces together. So anyways, I went through the next month and everything was normal. Nothing else happened. I didn't have any other dreams or anything. And then I work from home, and part of my fatherly duty is going to get my either both kids or one kid after school. So I went to go get my daughter on the afternoon of April 11th, which was a Monday. And we were headed home, and just a few, I don't know, probably not even more than about a quarter of a mile, I guess, from the school where she goes. We were in our Jeep. We were headed up a hill, and a guy driving a pickup truck, a standard size Dodge Ram type pickup truck, pulling a landscaping trailer. I don't know if there was anything on the trailer. He was headed toward us, and we were going to pass each other. And he lost control of his truck, and the trailer apparently was the culprit. It jackknifed him. It basically started going to one side, and he overcompensated. And he was going full speed. I don't know. I'm not sure what miles per hour it was. I'm guessing around 45 because the speed limit through there is 45. So he lost control of the truck, and it literally jackknifed, right angled, straight into us, and so across the center line and smashed right into us, impacting directly on my side. I mean, you couldn't have hit me personally more than he did. Why he didn't have any control over it, I don't know. I've not pulled trailers. I don't know how difficult it is. I've heard it's difficult sometimes, especially if you lose control of your trailer. But anyways, he jackknifed. He lost control and he smashed into us. And as he smashed into us, I was instantly knocked unconscious, and it spun our Jeep around, probably, I don't know how many degrees. It wasn't 90 degrees, but close to it. And we took out another stoplight type of pole. It wasn't a stoplight. It was a intersection warning, because you're going up a hill and it's warning you that there's an intersection coming up to slow down. So we literally sheared off this intersection pole. And I found out later that the pole itself, because it has blinkers on it and a solar panel and stuff, that pole itself weighed 600 pounds, and that came crashing down on top of my vehicle. And we ended up in the ditch. So it was myself and my daughter and our little dog. And I sustained many injuries, and so did my dog. My daughter, who was in the back seat on the passenger side, strapped in, was fine. Physically, she was okay. She was unhurt other than a seatbelt bruise, which is really amazing given the fact that we had just gone through that. Anyway, the paramedics and EMTs and everybody showed up, and fire department, I think. And then the neighbors, the people that lived right across the street from where the accident happened, they even came out and pitched in and helped Jenna make a phone call to my wife and let her know what was going on. And it's just a really interesting story, because a lot of people did pitch in to help, and they had to cut me out of my Jeep using a Jaws of Life thing and cut the door off. And I was kind of sandwiched in. It hit my driver's side and drove the dashboard and floorboard up into me and my left side. So most of my injuries were on the left side. I woke up, this was on after the afternoon of Monday the 11th. I woke up Monday, April 11th. I woke up 2 days later in the trauma ward at Vanderbilt University with my family around me, including my mom, who lives out of town, and my wife's parents, who also live out of town. And I didn't know what was going on. I knew who I was. I knew who they were, but I didn't know what had happened. So they started telling me bit by bit what happened. I had sustained massive injuries. My left hip was shattered. It literally drove the ball and socket where the ball and socket meet. It drove it through and broke off, and fractured my orbital, which is your forehead right here, my orbital bone. And I had some minor head trauma because the windshield came crashing in on me. And I had a fractured left knee and a couple of ribs. And then the other major problem was my C7 vertebrae was fractured too. We found out later. Of course, I was unconscious, so I wasn't really in the decision process as far as what needs to happen as far as surgeries and stuff goes. So when I got to the hospital, they obviously took me into surgery as soon as they could. And they had to do the hip first because it was the main issue. And the hip surgery was the first day, and then the second day they did the spine surgery. And with that one, they had to go in through the front of my neck and put in a metal plate to fuse two vertebrae together so that it wouldn't fracture further. And I heard later, I don't know if it's true, but C7 is one that can really be easily damaged, and then it can usually cause paralysis. So they were trying to be careful and do the right thing. They didn't do any unnecessary work. They didn't do any surgery on my knee, even though it was fractured, because they knew with the hip I would be non-weight bearing for some time. So they didn't treat me and do extra surgeries that they didn't feel were necessary, which I was very grateful for later. So anyway, so I went through those two surgeries, and then spent a few days in the trauma ward, and then eventually moved to a regular room for a day or two. And then from there across the street to a rehab hospital. And I was there they told me I'd probably be there 2 to 3 weeks, and I was there 10 days because I was determined that I was going to get back to, I wanted to get back home as soon as possible. And so I did all the stuff that I was supposed to do as far as physical therapy and occupational therapy and speech therapy and all that good stuff. So I was able to get out of there pretty quickly, relatively speaking. Now I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair, and I could stand up but use a walker. And that was my life for the next 4 months. I had to use a walker and a wheelchair. Eventually, I graduated to using a cane. I used a cane for a while once I started physical therapy. But, the real blessing in the whole thing was that my daughter was unhurt. But my son, who was not mentioned in the dream, nor was my wife, my son, 9 times out of 10, would have been with me after school, sitting right next to me. And he would have been in the accident, except for 10 days before my accident. He had injured his knee in a basketball game, and he was with my wife the day of my accident. He was with my wife, and they were on the way to the doctor to see about his knee. So he normally would have been with me. He would have been injured had he been in the vehicle with me. And I thought it was interesting. Later, I realized that the dream didn't mention anyone else but my daughter, and it was only her and I in the vehicle. So I thought that was pretty bizarre. Anyway, he was not in the picture. Luckily, he was fine. And it wasn't until, I guess, probably I'd been home for several days or so. I don't remember when exactly. I started realizing after all of this physical trauma that I remembered then that I had the dream. When I was in the hospital, I hadn't remembered that. And I found out later, I guess, Tasha, that you had talked to my wife and mentioned it to her about the dream. And so you had put it together actually way before I did. So kudos to you on that. I didn't even really go back and start remembering about the dream until probably several days after I'd been home at the end of April. So I was there. The accident happened on the 11th, and I got out of the hospital on the 27th, I think it was. So I was there for almost 3 weeks or whatever. And when I came home, it was, it was a lot of work, just trying to kind of get back to what I consider normal in being able to move around. I felt fine. Luckily, I didn't have a lot of pain, and I stayed away from pharmaceutical drugs and painkillers and things like that they were constantly asking me, did I want any medicine to handle my pain. And I praise God for that, because I never really had any what I consider bad pain. Now, I did have some pain. I'm not going to say that I didn't. I did. It was more what I would consider discomfort. I never really felt like I was being tortured or anything like that. It was more an inconvenience and not being able to do my normal stuff. That was the part that was getting me more than anything. And having lost my dog in the accident, she didn't die in the accident, but her injuries were bad enough that they had to decide to put her down later. I think the same day. She had brain trauma and I think a broken back, and I don't know, but that was the other hard part for me, was just having lost her. But I did, at the same time, I praise God, because my daughter was fine, you know, and I knew I would be fine. There was never a time personally where I felt my life was really in danger. I knew that God was watching out for me, and I knew that um, his angels were keeping me safe and keeping her safe. And I never felt in any way felt like I was going to lose my life. I found out later that the people that were around me weren't sure. They thought there was a good chance I might not make it. So, including my wife. So, but I'm here to tell you that I'm fine now. I can walk again. I've been doing physical therapy since early July, and this is the first full week of November. So, you know, it's been a long road for sure. It's been an interesting summer to say the least. But uh, I'm just glad to still be around, and I'm still glad to be able to walk. I mean, I very easily could have been paralyzed, or could have lost my leg, or any number of things that could have happened, you know, and I didn't. And you know, I'm gonna get back to 100%. I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. I can't run yet. If I needed to run, I can't run. I can jog for short little spurts, you know, but I can't do the things that I was able to do before the accident. Some things, but running being probably the main thing. But I'll get back there. You know, my doctor told me that it's probably going to be a year realistically from the time of the accident. So I'm 6 months in, and I'm in pretty good shape as far as getting back to where I want to be. So I think I'll get there. It's just going to take a few more months to get that last few percent of normal, we consider normalcy back into my life. I'm about 90%, maybe 95% now, but getting those last 5 to 10% is going to take a while for sure. But you know, it's just the hand I've been dealt, and I know that God put me through that for a reason. And I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying that he allowed it to happen for some reason, and I'm still working through why that is. And I'm not mad in any way. I'm just, it's just interesting to me that I had the experience I had exactly a month beforehand. I should also point out that March 11th was the day of the dream, and then April 11th was the day of the accident. And 11 is a key number when you look at scripture, but also numerology and things like that. 11 is an important number, and it usually means chaos, disorder, and judgment. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly how all that works in. But if you think about all the 11s around us, from 9/11 to March 11th, which was when Fukushima happened. You look at the JFK assassination, that was the 22nd, which is 2/11s. You know, 11 is an important number for those who like to do harm. And I don't know if it was a total coincidence and it just happened that way, or if something was planned that way. I sort of feel like the message to me is I probably should have listened closer to what the guy's warning, but it's not like he gave me any details as far as when and where something was going to happen. I never knew that. And I never once felt like I was going to change what I do, because not doing what you do, and in my case, it's telling the truth. Truth telling to me is not an option to not do that. I mean, I would just as soon give my life than to not say what the truth is. You know what I mean? So I wasn't going to change what I was doing. I think the guy on the other end of the communication knew that. So I don't know if he was a rogue person and wanted to just give me a warning, or if he was being told that in order to scare me into submission. And that if he was doing that, then he didn't do his job very well, because I didn't stop doing what I was doing. Matter of fact, I kind of doubled down. Actually, I started doing it more, you know, as far as my posting and the things I was researching at that time. So anyway, here we are in November. We're just a couple days out from the election, and yeah, everything that's coming out right now is pretty amazing. So I'm just glad to still be conscious, to still have the power of thought, and to still be able to communicate with people like you, and we'll see where we go from here.
Thank you for sharing all that. You guys, I need to point out that, well, when I heard about his accident, his wife, I talked to his wife, and anyway, there were a lot of people praying for Doug, a lot of people.
They were. You're right.
There's a lot of people who appreciate what he does, and anyway, it was pretty amazing to see all of the people that were praying for him, and then for Doug to say that he never once felt any fear, and he just felt peace. It's like, it's scary, and knowing about the dream, and that was my first thought. It's like, oh, and like, I think Doug's story was really important for me, because there may be people or authorities or powers that would not like truth telling and would not like those who fight for justice and for good, and would try to interfere with that, and like you said, try and scare us away from doing that. And I don't know, it's been really an encouragement to me. Well, as soon as Doug could get back on the computer, he was back to posting this stuff again. It's like, hey,
yeah,
do what you want, but this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to serve God. I'm here to fight for what's right. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not living free, and I'm not living God's calling for me. And Doug's been a real encouragement to me, and like a mentor to me, I think, ever since starting to talk about this stuff. The people aren't going to like it, but I'm not here to make people like me. I'm here to do what I'm called to do, and he just encourages me to be courageous and to press on and to look to God and look to the Bible, and not look at other people or what they think. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, friendship with the world is enmity toward God, right? We can't have both. And while we do have friends and family, making the world like us is not really in our best interest. It's God that we should be looking to, and He's the one that we should be caring about what He thinks about us and in our lives. So, yeah, I mean, you're right, and I certainly have not lived my life that way my whole life up to this point. Far from it, but this accident definitely puts things in perspective. I felt like I was starting to do that better than I had been before the accident, but now since, it's probably a little easier for me in some respect, because I'm able to take what happened and give the glory to God because He deserves it. I had nothing to do with any of it because I was unconscious during the whole thing. And I know I was being prayed for and being prayed over and being held up by family and by friends and people like you, and people on Facebook that I had interacted with but didn't really know. And I know they were praying for me, and that made all the difference. And it literally shortened the amount of time that I had to spend recovering and healing. The healing process was sped up, I feel, because of all the prayers. So thank you, Tasha, for your prayers and continued prayers. And for everybody out there who knew about this and was praying for me and my family. It did make all the difference. So Just keep it up, and I appreciate it. And don't stop praying.
I think another thing that God did through your accident for me was to show me that, I mean, I know that God, basically that God brings good out of everything. He allows us to experience things that may not be pleasant, but what good He brings out of our suffering. And I mean, I've seen that with my own story. You know, since talking about Morgellons, it's been really hard. I have a lot of unpleasant things come my way from people who watch my stuff.
Yeah.
But I also have had the greatest ministry in my life has been through this suffering. The opportunities to love people and help people and
Yeah.
share with people and share the strength that God gives to me. I mean, God is using this suffering so much for good. And I think when I watched Doug go through his experience, it was like, I mean, there are things that maybe would be afraid of, like, I mean, there are people with Morgellons who talk about being targeted individuals and directed energy weapons and gang stalking and all this stuff. And I think, you know, I never wanted to think about that because, well, first, because Seth said I'm not allowed to. But I think because, like, what are you going to do with it? So somebody's doing that. What are you going to do about it? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so I have to focus on taking my next step right where I am. You know, if things are happening, well, what can I do right here? And I think, you know, here something did happen to you, right? But guess what? God only allowed what He was going to use for good. You know, He totally
Yeah.
protected you. You should have died, and that wasn't God's plan. And I have a lot of friends with Morgellons who are like, you know, they think I'm not going to make it through the night. I'm dying, and I felt like that too. I think I'm going to die tonight. I had many times where I'm like
Hmm.
telling Seth, making plans for when I die tonight. I need you to contact these people or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and yet I just keep seeing it's not over till God says it's over. Like, it's not over till the fat lady sings. It's like that's what it's been with this.
Yeah.
And God said, you're not done. Doug's not done here. And
Yeah.
I'm going to use this to bring glory to myself and to let people see that I take care of my kids. And it's brought a lot of encouragement to me to just keep going and to just know that you're out there doing what you're doing and just continuing on. It's really encouraged me. So you've been helping all of my followers.
Well, thanks.
God has been helping through you. I also wanted
Yeah.
to say, oh, did you have something to say right there?
No, I just I appreciate what you just said, and I never felt anything but peace. I never felt like it was my time yet. Um, you know, I reflected later on, I guess, a few months later after the accident, and I just remember thinking that really for all of my life, I mean, ever since I can remember, at least as far back as when I started driving, teenage years, you know, I always knew I was going to be in some sort of car accident. I always did, but I never really delved into it. I never worried about it. I knew that something would probably happen, and I didn't necessarily think that that was going to be what does me in. You know, I don't really think that way. You know, so I felt peace through the whole thing, and I definitely feel like God's work, whatever He's doing through me, is not done yet, or certainly He would have let me pass. So whether that's truth telling or even if it's just being here for my kids, you know, I'm here for a multitude of different reasons. It's not just one thing, but I do know that I will try and be the best conduit I can be for him to do something through me. And I'm open to whatever that is. I just have to be able to differentiate and discern his voice from the evil one from anyone else. So that's the trick, is being able to understand uh, that still small voice that we hear. That's the tricky one. So I know he's not done with me. So I appreciate what you said. Thank you.
I also wanted to tell you guys in context of what Doug shared. You probably have heard about it. I mean, depending on which videos of mine you've watched, but I did have one experience that was a really really clear voice to skull, like where my husband's alarm clock went off, and as it was going off, this started happening. These physical symptoms all over my body, like this throbbing in my head. I felt like I was having a heart attack. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I got this flashing on the screen of my mind that you can't get away from us, or you can't escape us. That's what it was. You can't escape us. You can't escape us. And it just happened over and over. And this was the day after I had taken off my continuous glucose monitor, because I found that I felt a lot better when I took it off. And I I also had, when I took off the Terminator zapper, I felt a lot better. All this voice to skull stuff and like weird dream stuff was connected to this technology that I had. And so it's really, gone way down since taking off the technology, but it's definitely been good for me to hear. I know from other Morgies, other people with Morgellons talk about their experiences with voice to skull stuff. And but you talked in one interview with Dr. Rima Lebo and General Burt about this technology, and that it was offered to them to buy, so they know that it exists. Can you summarize that a little bit?
Oh, well, they just verified what I was telling them, and also their attorney, Ralph Fusatola. They all three, in 2 different interviews, confirmed that what I experienced was technologically entirely possible. And in fact, they had been seen and been offered a very similar technology shortly after the Cold War ended from the Soviet Union. They were offered a chance to buy into this technology. And according to them, they said that the Soviets at the time would take something like this technology and sell it to someone and tell those people that, okay, you're going to be the exclusive distributor of X, but then they'd sell it, dozens or hundreds of times to other people and tell the same thing to those people as well. You're going to be the exclusive distributor of X, when maybe there's dozens of other groups out there that have it. But they turned it down, obviously. They didn't want any part of it. But they did see it, apparently. And our interviews through Lost Arts Radio with Richard Sachs, the host of that show, we interview Barry Trower. And he is a microwave weapons and technology expert, and has been involved in working with microwave weapons since 1959. And he was in the British Royal Navy, and later worked with MI5 and MI6, which is where the James Bond story, the Secret Service basically in the James Bond story. So he worked with MI5 and MI6, and his job was to debrief spies, so captured spies, and he would debrief them about microwave and wireless technology. And but Barry is the one, for me, that gave it the name. He called it synthetic telepathy. And he said it's entirely possible, and he even offered to demonstrate it then when we were interviewing him. So it's definitely it's a real thing. It's not, you're not going to hear about it on the nightly news. It's a secret technology that lots of people are experiencing, and they may not even realize that they're experiencing it. So, yeah. So what you said is exactly right.
Yeah, sometimes I would be like praying and asking, and then I would hear a voice in my head, and I'm like, I mean, not like, it's like you kind of hear something or feel it or something, but I'm like, God would not tell me that. Like,
Yeah.
that, and like, God help me here, because I don't think that was you. You know, it
Right.
was like, it was confusing. I had to get in my Bible and just really like just, and you know, since then I've, you know, this, Doug, and so do my followers, but I've done a lot of spiritual warfare and praying against demonic stuff. The Morgellons
Sure.
is demonic, and anyway, so it's all this mix of
Yeah.
things. But yeah, um,
Well, having the discernment to know what you're hearing and then to know what to do with it after that that's really difficult, and it takes a lot of prayer and talking to God, fasting, and just being open to God's word, and being able to block out all the other stuff that you know isn't His word. And that sounds simplistic, but doing that is very difficult. And I certainly don't have it down, far from it. But you know, it's a learning process. We all go through it, and hopefully we can learn to discern better than we are now. And that's what I'm still trying to do.
yeah, I feel like definitely there's the spiritual part of it, but there's also the physical part. Like, the more detoxing that I did, the more I got these Morgellons out of me. Like, I showed Doug a picture this morning of this blue fiber ball that came out of me. I don't have any clothes that are blue, you know, and it kind
Yeah.
of flew out of my sleeve, and I'm like, that was weird.
Yeah.
But the more this stuff comes out of me as I'm doing stuff to cleanse, it also, my mind is clearer, and it's, you know, my prayer life is more like, it's more, everything is more clear when I'm talking to God and listening. And
Yeah.
so definitely there's a very physical way that we can help ourselves by doing these things to cleanse and detox and breathe clean air, and so that we're not continuing to breathe in so much of this Morgellons and smart dust
Yeah.
nastiness.
Yeah. It's really difficult to get away from it, you know, because as it's intended, it's everywhere. So I'm still trying to figure out, and I've kind of basically come down on the side of, with Morgellons, and I don't particularly suffer from these symptoms, so I only have to go by what you say and what others say who do. But I personally believe that your body and other people who suffer with Morgellons, their bodies are trying to fight it off, and they know something's wrong. And to me, you're not infected with something that I don't have. To me, your body's trying to fight it off, and my body has accepted it. So I'm not experiencing symptoms because mine has accepted it. And through this nanotechnology, that's part of the way that they can track our DNA, like I mentioned before. I don't know how it works exactly. I just know that it's real. And I personally think that the people with Morgellons are the few who suffer with it because their bodies understand that it's not supposed to be there. And I don't know what kind of technology it is, if it's fallen angel technology or what, but I do believe that the rest of us the 99 point, what, 99% of the rest of us who don't suffer from Morgellons, I think it's just because our bodies have totally accepted it, totally integrated it, and we have no clue it's even going on.
Right.
And at some point, whether it's through wireless systems and quantum computers or whatever it is, at some point, that technology that's in all of us will be switched on, and that will become the mark of the beast system. And at that point, we decide whether we're going to play Satan's game and become part of the system, or stay on God's side and rely on Jesus Christ and his blood. So I think that Jesus's blood will literally keep us and keep this nanotechnology from taking over our lives if we rely on Jesus's blood when it comes time to make a decision whether we're going to accept the mark of the beast or not. So I think it's all interconnected. That's my thoughts on it anyway. And
Yeah.
I don't know nearly as much about it as some people, but I do take a look at it and I try and see the overall bigger picture. And to me, that's where it's headed.
Yeah, we've talked about, I mean, Doug's talked about how, this perspective, and I'm like, yeah, I totally feel like all this stuff, I feel like I'm experiencing it ahead of time. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
it does get switched on, and I experience
Yeah.
the attacks, and how do I get through the spiritual attacks? By praying in Jesus' name and confessing the blood of Jesus over myself. That's
Yeah.
what makes. And my husband and I have been praying. Doug was actually the one who sent me that video on the power of prayer, where I told you guys about it, where breaking the curses has made all the difference for me, and that's how I stopped the electronic attacks.
Yeah.
Is by praying in Jesus' name and breaking the curses, casting out the demons. But the breaking the curses was the new one. But anyway, he sent me this video on it, and where was I going with this? I don't know where I was going, but
Well, the power of prayer, you're right. Yeah.
But just that I'm going to do it right now. Anything that's attacking my brain, in Jesus' name, I command you to get out, and I'm breaking these curses, or anything that's coming through the electronics. Get out and stop. You don't have authority over me. So anyway, ever since, oh yes, my husband and I have been praying. This is what I was saying. So since Doug sent this video on the power of prayer, we committed to pray for our nation, for our world, together in the evening. So we've been doing this, and as we're praying and interceding, and we're doing like powerful prayer, like this sort of breaking curses, binding up demons and evil spirits, and just coming against the evil in Jesus' name. As we're praying this, it's like really powerful, and I feel in my feet like these electricity storms from the Morgellons. It's like the same thing that happens when I do something that really attacks them. Like when I would used to do the magnet massager on my face, like early on, and they were really bad in there. So I put the magnet in there, and then all the fibers are just going crazy,
Yeah.
And so that happens in my feet. It was like some major electricity storms in my feet as we're praying. And then I also feel the like oozing, like whoa that happens as the demons are leaving during the
Yeah.
spiritual attack. So now I know what it feels like, but that's what's happening while we're praying. So I know that it's really powerful, and they don't like it. It's kind of
No, I
like
was going to say that.
medicine, right?
They don't like it. If people out there want to understand the technology, or that's probably not the right word, the scientific aspect of prayer, that it is scalar waves from our spirit to God to heaven. They should check out Dr. Ted Brower. He's really good about talking about scalar waves and how it's all connected, how it's scalar waves that's being used in prayer and things like that. And Dr. Ted Brower has he's on healthmasters.com, and he's written a number of books, and he's on multiple radio shows. I think he even has his own radio show. So he's a really good person, in my opinion, to listen to about this stuff. And he does know a lot about Morgellons. So I think that's a good place for some people, at least, to start. I don't agree with 100% of what he says. I don't agree with 100% of what most anybody says. It's
Right.
just, you can kind of like pick and choose. That's where you kind of get into using your discernment and figuring out what is actual fact and what is not. So
Here comes
that's
the
kind of where I'm
doggies.
at. Yep, they're here. Yep.
Yeah,
So
it was
anyways,
from Ted Brower that I first heard about scalar waves. That one that you sent me a while back, and just hearing about prayer in the context of scalar waves. And it was after that that I learned about the scalar waves coming through the directed energy weapons, the Gwen towers, the harp, the things that I learned about as I took off the Terminator zapper and learned that these frequencies were affecting me and
yeah,
causing
sure.
depression and putting these thoughts in my brain, so.
Yeah, frequencies are very powerful, very, very powerful. And people don't necessarily think they are because they can't see them. But I mean, it's what allows you to use a computer wirelessly, or a wireless phone, or whatever, a cell phone. That's all coming through waves, and so why wouldn't it affect your health? Of course it would. It's just a matter of um, just understanding that most of those frequencies out there, whether it's coming from an electronic source or whatever, most of those frequencies are going to be harmful to some degree, either to your health or spiritually.